What we need is a constant and consistent pressure campaign. That's what we need. The majority of us need to engage in collectively a constant and consistent pressure campaign on Congress to do the things that we want them to do, to provide the life that we deserve. So I want to share with you what's on my non-negotiable list when I go out to these meet and greets, when I've already had a candidate reach out to me, ask me to work on their campaign. And number one, I haven't asked her yet, but my number one question is going to be, how do you feel about expanding the Supreme Court? Because I believe that's what needs to be done. And depending upon her answer is going to determine whether or not I work on her campaign. So expanding the court, that's one that's on my list. Reinstating the child tax credit. We were pulling children out of poverty, helping parents, and Republicans shot that down as soon as they could, when people haven't even recovered from COVID yet. People are still trying to recover from COVID, and they cut that off. Student debt relief. You got to be talking about student debt relief and making sure that that happens for young people. That's a non-negotiable for me. Banning assault weapons, a non-negotiable for me. Codifying Roe, a non-negotiable for me. Protecting voting rights, a non-negotiable for me. Passing the George Floyd Policing Act, a non-negotiable for me. Taxing the rich. Stop trying to find money through student loans and all these other programs that you siphoning money away from, when all you have to do is tax the rich. If candidates aren't talking about these things, they are not getting my vote. And also, I will say this to you. You're going to be, the candidates that are going to be aligned with what I just listed off, they're going to tend to be more progressive and more than likely younger. So think Justin in Tennessee. That's what you need to be thinking. Thinking about that type of candidate is going to be moving the needle on the things that you want to see change in the world. Have your own non-negotiable list, but hold their feet to the fire. Show up at those rallies, show up at those meet and greets, jump on that Zoom and ask your questions. And the next component of our pressure campaign has to be that we pull up. We pull up. After we get these people elected to office, if we see that they're falling off and they're putting our issues to the side, all those promises, all those things that they promised, we need to pull up. Hey, you need to be working on this. You haven't talked about this in a while. By pulling up, I don't mean scaling the damn Capitol and shitting in the building. I'm not talking about that kind of barbaric, crazy behavior. I'm talking about phone calls. I'm talking about emails. I'm talking about showing up in DC. I'm talking about showing up at their local offices and asking questions, holding their feet to the fire, standing outside the building, having a protest. We need to be pulling up like Republicans pull up, without the violence and all the craziness. Because you know what's getting things done for them, or part of it, is that Republicans are afraid of them. I don't want anybody to live in fear. I'm not saying that. But we don't apply pressure. We just go from election to election. We think it's just good enough to show up and vote. And then half y'all don't even show up to do that. All we asking is for you to show up to vote. And a lot of y'all won't do that. So our pressure campaign, get your non-negotiable list together. And here's the last thing I'm going to say. And I think I've said this in another video. In the primary election, once you've identified your candidates, vote for your candidate, try to push your candidate through. But if your candidate does not make it to the general election, you need to get on board and vote for whomever has a fucking D behind their name. I get it. I understand. I've said this over and over. I wanted Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris to be on the ticket. But that doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Y'all know that I voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary. But guess what? I got my ass on board in the general and I voted for Biden. That's how Republicans do. They show up and vote in every single election. And they vote for the individual or the entity or the groundhog or the mule, the elephant of the day that has an R behind its name. That's what they do. That's how they stay in power. That's how they keep control. And the rest of y'all need to get on board with that shit. We need a consistent and constant pressure campaign. It's the only way we're going to get ourselves out of this mess. And number one, the Supreme Court has got to go. The Electoral College has got to go. We got to ban assault weapons. We got to codify Roe. We've got to make sure that voting rights are protected. We have to make sure people are protected by banning those assault weapons and passing the George Floyd Policing Act. We got to make sure that we're putting more money in parents' pockets with the child tax credit. We got to make sure that we're putting more money back in the pockets of people who are carrying these student loans. Those student loans have got to go. That was a campaign promise by Joe Biden. And the last thing I'm going to say is we have to tax the rich. If you got enough money to fly your ass to the moon and get in submersives and pay $250,000 to go and look at the Titanic from a bubble, then you can pay taxes. You can pay taxes. You can pay taxes according to your income. And that's all I got to say about that. Constant and consistent pressure campaign by the woke mob. Woke mob out.